What's going on, guys? Balkan Architect here, and today I have a really interesting and extremely important topic for you. So this channel is specialized towards creating Revit tutorials, and Revit is usually considered one of the main programs when it comes to BIM, or Building Information Modeling. But the truth is, what I show you here on this channel is usually only the beginning, the first step. So when we're talking about the whole Building Information Modeling, it's so much more, and in this video I'm going to be explaining the whole process. I'm going to be going over a whole successful implementation of BIM throughout a project's lifecycle. Now, the first thing that we have to cover are some basics and concepts, and then we can get into actual software and we can check out the actual model and work on that. So when it comes to these large-scale projects, the first thing that has to happen is for the client to create something that's called an employer's requirements, or EIR. This will usually include all of the specification for the building, the scope of BIM services required from the contractor, and all of the allocation of risk for all of those unknown items. Now, in response to that, the contractor will create something that's called a BIM execution plan, or BEP. This document defines all of the BIM goals, most critical BIM users, levels of BIM implementation, and deliverables and processes required to achieve the desired result. This also clarifies roles and their responsibilities, standards to be applied, and procedures to be followed. Now, something like this is truly necessary when it comes to these large-scale BIM projects, as it ensures that everybody is on the same page when it comes to what needs to be created in this very advanced and complicated workflow. In design, budgeting, and tendering purposes, we will use a 3D BIM model for design review, clash detection, quantity takeoffs, bills of quantities, and preparation for tender packages. Now, by adding time dimension to that 3D model, we get something that's considered a 4D BIM model. And when we add cost information to that, we get something that's called a 5D BIM model. These models are widely used in construction planning phase as well as construction phase with a variety of purposes, such as creating a construction schedule. This basically shows what gets constructed and when. Resource planning and allocation. This just shows you how can we use our resources in the most efficient way. We have cash flow analysis, how much will it cost, at which point, and progress tracking, tracking how the construction is progressing, of course. And also planning versus actual analysis. This is a comparison of what was planned and what actually happened in the construction processes, and much, much more. Now, finally, we get to a 6D BIM model when we add all of the operation and maintenance information. Now, we can get this from the manufacturer of all of the different components inside of the building. Each component will then have their own installation date, required maintenance, operation details, as well as maintenance plans, specifications, warranty information, and much more. Now, another really important thing is that should be defined by the BIM execution plan is called LOD, or a level of development. Currently, the best document that describes LOD of elements and its implementation is the BIM Forum Level of Development Specification for 2019. For level of development, we have many standards, and I actually go into depth in explaining all of these in this previous tutorial. So I'll leave a link to that in the description for all of those that want to check it out. Now, here is an example of a properties spreadsheet that shows how different properties are sorted and ready to populate the BIM model with all necessary information. We can see that every property has several parameters, and those have to be completely defined by the BIM model. Now, besides the names of properties, there is, of course, a property set that will be placed in, property value type, and finally, project phase and LOD showing in which phase for which LOD of the BIM model that property should be added. Some BIM software solutions support importing spreadsheets like this and instantly enriching the BIM model with all needed data. When it comes to file format, most BIM execution plans will require from companies that are working on projects to use the IFC file format to exchange BIM models between different softwares and applications. Now, Industry Foundation Classes, or IFC, is the platform-neutral file format developed by the Building Smart, and it's a primary standard for open BIM data exchange. Also, I talk a little bit about this topic of IFC in one of my previous videos, and I'll leave a link to that as well in the description. Even though most of you watching this video are probably Revit users, and Revit does promote that it can complete most of the tasks necessary for building construction, in reality it's quite rare to see something like that. In practice, it's very likely, for example, for the structural model to be developed in Revit and the MEP model to be developed in MagiCAD, and then structural engineer will export his model into IFC and send it to the MEP engineer, who can now import that model into MagiCAD and use it for as a layout for sewage and installations, for example. In the end, engineers of different disciplines will each create their own IFC files, and we can end up with hundreds of different IFC files for more complex projects. When we merge all of them together in one project, we get a federated BIM model, and IFC files become sources or source files inside of that federated BIM model. A design review and clash detection is usually performed by the federated BIM model when conflicts between different disciplines can be visible. Project Manager can now easily spot mistakes and inconsistencies between different disciplines, and he can submit them back to the corresponding engineers for revision. For example, if a structural model has a beam and an MEP model has a pipe running through that same beam, in that case, a solution must be found for either moving one of the elements or revisiting the beam construction to make sure that it's possible to cut an opening for that pipe to run through. In this way, all of these problems can be resolved long before construction starts, and therefore minimizing the possibilities for delays due to mistakes and inconsistencies inside of those projects. To achieve something like this, the project manager will use the BIM Collab format, or BCF, another file format developed by Building Smart that is suited to track the issues as they're being identified, reported on, and resolved in the course of the BIM process. It allows to send model markups, clash reports, general comments between all project members, and so on. When the issue is solved in the modeling software, the BCF is updated, and this is communicated back to the project manager. Similar to the IFC format, it's supported by most BIM software applications. Okay, so here we are in Revit, and this is probably where most of you are comfortable in, so that's where we're starting. So I'm just going to go here to open, and then the idea is that I want to open up some of the sample files, and here I have this folder, and as you can see we have the sample files for the architectural, MEP, and structural parts of the project, and I'm just going to be opening up these files and then exporting them into IFC so we can take them further in additional software, so we can take this project from just a simple 3D project into 4D, 5D, or even 6D BIM. So as you can see, this is that sample building. This is the architectural part of the project, and now we're just going to be exporting this to IFC by going to File, Export, then going to IFC. Then we have to specify the file location here, and I already have a folder on my desktop, and basically the same process that I'm using for the architectural building. As you can see over here, it's being exported to IFC. I'm just going to be repeating this whole process again for the structural as well as the MEP version. So as soon as we're done exporting all of these three, we can then move over to additional software, and we're going to be using the Bexel Manager for that. So here we have those 3 exported IFC files, and then we can just use those in order to open up or create a new project here in the Bexel Manager, where we can, well, manage this project. So this is the part that's going to be used by the project manager, who's following all of the works being done and following all of the engineers, the structural engineers, the architectural engineers, as well as the MEP engineers. So as you can see here, it's just being loaded in. And when you load in 3 files like this, it's immediately going to be assembling them up in just one file to be managed here, as you can see on the screen. Now at this point, we're going to be doing a job that's for clashes, and we're going to be doing hard clash detection, which is located down here. So here we just have to find all of the elements. Just make sure to check the elements that we want to clash, add a name for these clashes, so hard clash detection, and then we're just going to be waiting for a moment for Bexel to do its magic. And as you can see, here are all of the found clashes. So now I'm just going to OK out of this menu, and then here on the bottom of the screen in the clash detection window, we can see all of the clashes. Now for this second job, we're going to be doing the detection of duplicates, and then we're going to see what we get for that. So let's just run that clash detection. Here we have all of the clashes that have appeared, so let's just click OK. Here are all of the clashes, and when we click on this clash view mode, it's going to just show on the model where all of those clashes are located. So as you can see here, we have all of the clashes. Now we can switch between jobs, between duplicates and then hard clashes, and then we can see what appears in the clash view mode. So as you can see here, we're just showing wherever the Bexel Manager reported any types of clashes, and as you can see, the list is quite extensive. So there's going to be a lot of work for the engineers to kind of fix this model up. But now we just want to check that to make sure that everything looks okay. So by selecting each individual clash, the Bexel Manager is immediately going to zoom into that location just to view that. And now let's open up the BCF Manager, which is used in order to basically send all of this information, all of these clash issues, to the engineers. So now, as you can see, you can drag all of these over, so we can have a list of pretty much all issues that we have on this project, and then we can export those issues so they can go directly back into Revit to individual engineers. Also, we can create a new issue for our duplicates. And for our duplicates, what we're going to be doing is selecting all of them, as you can see, and then dragging them over here. And then what we're going to be doing is creating even a new issue. And for that one, let's group all of these together. So as you can see, we can create a clash group. We just named it duplicates. And then when we take that whole group and drag it over to the BCF Manager, as you can see, it's only appearing as one issue, which might be a bit easier for the engineer to work with. So we can just name this issue duplicates, save that, and then we can go back into Revit. And now here in the Revit, we have the BIM Collab tab. Now this is the BCF Manager that you can find online. I'm going to be leaving a link in the description. It's fairly straightforward to install this plugin, and it can open up that issue that was issued by the project manager. And as soon as we click on that issue, as you can see here, it shows in Revit exactly where that issue is, and we can kind of isolate all of the elements, and we can just delete all of the elements that we no longer need because, well, they're overlapping, they're duplicates. Now we can go back here to the 3D view, and once we're back in the 3D view, we can go to File and then Export again into IFC. Once you have changed your project or your Revit model according to the issues, so we have deleted everything that we don't need. Now we can export this to IFC again and then load that back into our Bexel project. So we can find our project one, and then we can update that project. So you just go here, or maybe you named it project 2 or something like that, and then we can choose our file. So this is the updated architectural file. And once we have chosen that, we can just click OK, and as you can see, it's going to be updating that project. This is the part of the project, the architectural part, that needs to be changed. So let's just make sure to match to source and then click OK, and then it's going to basically load in, get rid of the old file and give you the new file that hopefully will not be having any of the existing clashes. So once we're back here in the Bexel Manager, we can, as you can see, we only have clashes, we don't have duplicates, and the reason for that is because, well, we have deleted all of the duplicates according to the issue. Now here on the Bexel Manager website, we have the user area, and when we open that up, we also have the materials area. So when we go into materials, as you can see here, we have some manuals. Now all of these templates can be used in order to add information or IFC parameters into existing parameters. We also have some tutorials, and here we have some add-ins we can download. So here we have the IFC Checker, which we're downloading on our computer, and that's what we're going to be installing. So we just open up here, show in folder, we open up the zipped file, and then we can install that model checker. So we just install this add-in by clicking install file, and basically in just a second it's completely done. So as you can see here, we have this little PDF, which is a user manual that will explain how to work with this add-in. And then we also get this the spreadsheet, which includes all of the parameters. So these are all of the parameters that are necessary to be contained in the model. And instead of having to go one by one, here we have a whole spreadsheet which includes all parameters, and then we can add those parameters through different project phases. Now this can of course be customized. Now this is just a sample, and you can customize it according to the needs of the user with new properties for all different types of elements and different phases of the project. So when we go back here into the Bexel Manager, now we're just going to go into the IFC Model Checker. That's the one that we've just installed, and here is that spreadsheet that we're loading in, and now we can just run that spreadsheet. Now here we have to choose, of course, a phase, and then let's just hit run and wait for a moment to do. And now the add-in basically checks if all of the properties are properly represented in the model in accordance with the Excel spreadsheet that we've loaded in. Once model check is completed, Model Checker add-in automatically creates selection sets as a result of the check. So selection sets are placed in appropriate folders for each element type, and in the name of the selection set, we can see what is the issue with the elements it contains. Now, when we have all of these selection sets with issues, we can just drag the entire folder into the BCF Manager. When we drag the whole list, it allows us to then export that issue immediately in just a few seconds. And each issue will automatically have a description according to the name of the selection set. And then we can get it back into Revit to the individual engineer, who can double check everything and make sure to fix all of the mistakes and feed all of that information back into the model. So as you can see here, we have this property for fire rating. So let's just see what that is. So if we isolate that, as you can see, the fire rating property is missing in some elements. So if we decide to isolate those elements, we can quickly drop them in the BCF Manager, and then we can export that issue out. So here we are back in Revit, and I'm just going to go to the BIM collab BCF Manager, and then here I'm just going to load in the fire rating report, and when we just double click that, that's just going to highlight all of the elements where our fire rating information is completely missing. So that's what we've got out of that report. Now in this part of the video, I'm going to be showing you how to enrich the BIM model with information. So you can use the Bexel Manager in order to add information to the properties, which can later on be visible in a Revit as well. Now any data that we create for our model, we can add that information or that data inside of the properties for each model element. So this way we can create information in Bexel and then feed it into the model. So here, as you can see, we have a building construction schedule. And I already show you how to create these types of schedules in one of my previous videos. So if you're interested in that, make sure to check out the link in the description. I show you how to create this really cool building construction animation for this sample project, and it basically shows the whole process, and you end up with this really cool animation in the end. Another really good learning resource is the BexelManager.com website. Under their support area, we have the education and webinars, and here you can find a lot of really useful videos and webinars where they go into depth in all of these topics. So for example, for this type of an animation, you can check out lessons 6 and 7 to learn more about those topics. So now we're going to be using this construction schedule that you basically get with the sample project that you get when installing Bexel. And here, as you can see, for each element we have the start date, the finish date, the duration, and the total cost. So when we create this type of a schedule, we're going to be creating this new data. Now it's really important to feed this data back into the model. This data includes the start date, finish date, and total cost. So what we can do now is just select one of the elements here. So for example, here I selected the foundation, and I'm just going to isolate that category. So just isolate those selected elements. And then here in the properties, we're going to be checking all of these properties so we can see that the properties for these Revit elements don't have this information or this data, and we're going to be importing that in using a script. Now we're just going to jump back to the Bexel Manager website, and here, in order to add the properties to our model elements, we're going to be doing this using a script. So you can find really useful information here in the user area, and under materials we have some really useful materials. So in this case we have this API script section, and here we're just going to be downloading this sample schedule script by just clicking here on the link, and as you can see, the download has already started. Now of course, if you have any basic knowledge when it comes to programming, you can create your own scripts, or via API you can create your own tools which can help you when it comes to working on your projects. We're going to load this script in the Bexel Manager, and then we're going to be using that script in order to extract the information that we need, and that is of course the start date, finish date, as well as cost for each element, and then we can export that information later on into Revit. So here, as you can see, I select the roof, and then we have all of the information for that roof. Here for this wall, again, we have the same information for that wall as well. Now I'm going to be showing you how to bring these new properties back into the Revit model. So we're just going to be selecting the whole model, just the VV shortcut can be used for that, and then we're going to click here on the export button, and then for the properties export, first we're going to select all of the categories, and then we're going to be selecting all of the properties that we want to export, the finish date, the start date, as well as the cost. And then here we can just save that, just name it, save it, and there we go. Now we have created our Excel spreadsheet. Now, in order to have the ability to use that Excel spreadsheet in order to feed information back into your Revit model elements, we have to install a plugin for Revit, or an add-in for Revit, which is going to allow you to do so. So here on the Bexel Manager website, again under support, if you just click on that, here we have the downloads button. So if you open that up and scroll down a little bit here, you will see that we have the Bexel Manager Properties Importer. So you can just simply download that over here and then install that add-in for Revit. So it's pretty straightforward. It's a simple installation, and it's going to allow you to now import that data back into Revit. Now, back here in Revit, you can see that for any element in the Properties panel, we don't really have any information on that start date, end date, and cost data. But if we go here to the add-ins, we have that import properties add-in that we have just downloaded. So if we just click there and find that file, now I'm just going to import that. And as soon as it's done importing, so let's just give it a moment here, it's basically going to load in all of that information from that spreadsheet that we have exported out of the Bexel Manager, and it's basically importing that in here in Revit. And as soon as it's done here, we can just click OK, close this off, and now when we select any of those elements, if you scroll down here under Other, we have the start date, finish date, as well as total cost for each of those elements. So here we selected another element, and again, same thing here in the properties, you can see all of that information. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this quick little demonstration. So we have learned a little bit more about the whole process of these complex BIM projects that go into 4D, 5D, or even 6D BIM. We have outlined the whole workflow. I have shown you the communication, the back and forth between the individual engineers and the project manager. Individual engineers can be working in Revit or some other software, and then the project manager works in the Bexel Manager and then exports that data or imports new data that we have. And then also I have shown you how to use the data from the Bexel Manager to import that back into Revit. So you can manage the projects, and you can actually create these animations for the animations, and then you can import that start and finish and total cost data back into Revit. Okay, so that covers this tutorial. If you're interested in the Bexel Manager, I'm going to be including the link in the description of the video. Also there you can find a lot more educational material, those add-ins, so there's a lot of material in their user area on their website, so make sure to check that out, and I'll be back with another Balkan Architect tutorial in a few days. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.